This is Marie Segaris from Underground Crafter, and in today's video I'll be sharing all the special stitches you need to know in order to make the Mitered Square Pillow, which is a free Tunisian crochet pattern on my site. You can link to the pattern above or in the notes on YouTube. So to start, you're going to need to chain 25, and I should mention that although this is a Tunisian crochet pattern, because it's so small, you can actually use a regular crochet hook if you're a little bit daring, which I am, and you'll see that that's what I'm doing right now. So you'll want to start with those 25 chains, and then we'll take it from there. We're going to learn a couple of different stitches today. The Tunisian simple stitch, which is sort of the core foundational stitch of Tunisian crochet. You can think of it almost like the single crochet in standard crochet. And we'll also be learning some decreases and as well color changing. Okay, so 25 chains. Now with Tunisian crochet, each row has two parts. There's a forward and a return. And so what we're going to do is for the first row forward, which is sometimes called the base row, we're going to skip the first chain and insert our hook in the next chain. I like to use this back bump of the chain, which is this part that has a little bit of a little bump, rather than the front of the chain, which looks more like a little V, but you can do whatever you prefer. So we're skipping the first one, then we're inserting our hook into the next bump or chain, yarn over and drop a loop, which we're going to leave on the hook. And we're going to do that all the way across, except we don't have to skip one. We only had to skip one the first time. So we're going to insert the hook into the next chain, yarn over and drop a loop, and we're going to repeat that all the way across until we have all 25 hooks, or rather all 25 loops on the hook. And this is why I said that an adventurous person can do this on a regular crochet hook. If you're too worried about losing these loops, then you should use a Tunisian or Afghan crochet hook, which has a kind of a stopper on the end. So that was the forward part of the first row, and as you can see, the loops don't quite take up the whole hook, but again, it might only be for someone who's willing to live a little bit dangerously. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the return row. So we're going to chain one, or yarn over and drop a loop, that's the same as a chain one, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through two loops and repeat that all the way across. So yarn over and pull through two loops all the way across until you have just one loop on the hook. Okay, so we're going to draw through those last two loops until we have just one remaining. And that was row one, the forward and the return. So now we're going to start on row two forward. Now, one thing to keep in mind with Tunisian crochet is that unless the pattern mentions it, you're always going to skip this first vertical bar, so going up and down, that's right underneath the loop on the hook. So we're going to skip that one, and in the next one, the next vertical bar, we're going to do the Tunisian simple stitch. Now to make the Tunisian simple stitch, you're going to insert your hook under that vertical bar, then you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull up a loop. And we're going to keep doing that for the next 9 stitches. So it's for the first 10, so that was 1. So now we're going to go under the next vertical bar, yarn over, and drop a loop until we have 10 stitches plus this one, so 11 loops on our hook. Okay, so now we have 11 loops on the hook. We have the first one we started with plus the 10 from the 10 Tunisian simple stitches that we made, and now we're going to do the decrease for this pattern, which is abbreviated as TSS 3 together, or Tunisian crochet simple stitch 3 stitches together. So we're going to start by inserting our hook under the next 3 vertical bars. So 1, 2, and then 3. So we have now 3 loops on the hook. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3, and that's going to decrease it down to 1 stitch. So now you should have 12 stitches on your hook. And then we're going to Tunisian simple stitch in each of the next 11. Now bear with me, we're going to do something a little different on the very last one. So why don't you do that in the next 10, and then I'll show you a little trick for the very last simple stitch of the row. Okay, we're at the very end of the row and we're about to make our last Tunisian simple stitch. And why don't you turn up the piece a little bit and you'll see that there's these kind of 2 loops. I like to insert my hook under those both two loops and yarn over and draw through a loop rather than just the front one, which is technically the next vertical bar. That leaves a nice clean edge and it makes it easier to join these squares later, which is what we'll need to do. And now we're going to do that standard return row. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to draw through a loop, also known as a chain one, and then all the way across, yarn over and draw through two loops until you have just one loop left. Now you may be noticing as we get to the end of this row that it's curling a little bit. It's not laying flat. That's pretty common in Tunisian crochet. There's a couple of solutions to this. One is to use a relatively larger hook so that it doesn't curl as much. But for this particular pattern, we're going to use wet blocking at the end, where we basically wet each of our squares and pin them flat, and then that's going to take out the curl. So there's not really anything to worry about. Now, if you follow along with the pattern, what you're going to find is that for each row, we're going to do fewer Tunisian simple stitches. Then at that center point, we're going to decrease with that Tunisian simple stitch 3 together, which reduces 1 stitch on each side. And then we're going to end with fewer and fewer until we have a much smaller square. So for this particular row, we're going to Tunisian simple crochet in the next 9 stitches, and then simple stitch 3 together, and then in the next 10, and we're going to keep like that where it goes from 9 to 8 to 7 and so on all the way across. But just as a quick reminder before I show the ending finishing up part, I just want to do a refresher on the simple stitch, which is again insert the hook under the vertical bar, yarn over, and draw up a loop. And a refresher on the Tunisian simple stitch 3 together. So that's going to be insert the hook under the next 3 vertical bars, yarn over, and draw up a loop. And we'll keep doing that following along with the pattern until you get to row 12. Okay, so we've just finished row 11, the forward and return, and now I'm going to show you how to do the bind off. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook as though you're going to do that Tunisian crochet simple stitch 3 together. So we're going to insert our hook under the next 3 vertical bars, and then you're going to yarn over and draw through all the loops on the hook, including this first one. So you have just 1 loop, and then we're going to insert our hook in this last one as for the simple stitch, and we're going to yarn over and draw through all the loops. So we're just going to end up with this 1 loop, which we're going to then fasten off our yarn and pull through. So following along with the pattern, you're going to make as many of these as you need in each color, and then I'm going to show you how to make the striped version. Okay, there are several different ways to stripe in Tunisian crochet, but this particular pattern uses a version where we're going to change color on the return row. So for this pattern, we're going to change on the return row for row 1 when we have 2 loops left. So we will have been yarning over, going through 2 loops, and when we have 2 loops left, we're going to add the new color. So we're just going to put a loop of the new color on the hook and draw it through both of those loops. And you'll see that the old row is in this color, the next row will be in this color. For this particular pattern, since it's for a pillow and the back won't be seen, there's no need to fasten off the color. You can just carry it in the back because it'll be hidden anyway. But for some other colors, stripe patterns, you might want to fasten off and just, you know, weave in those ends, but not for this one. And then you're going to follow the pattern for row 2 using the new color all the way across. And as you can see, you'll start getting a little stripe there. We'll change this every row. So on every row for this striped pillow pattern, you're gonna actually switch the color on the return row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 2 more for this. And then we have our simple stitch 3 together where we insert the hook under 3 loops at once, 3 of those vertical bars at once, yarn over and draw through all 3. And then we're going to keep working across with this new color, and I'll show you again how to change it on the way back and also how it looks on the back, because I think that's helpful. Now you can also slide your loops down. Even though we're not using a regular Tunisian crochet hook, there should be plenty of room, and if you're worried about it, you can always tie a rubber band on the end, or you can use a Tunisian crochet hook, or you can also use a one of those knitting needle point protectors. You can just put it on the end of the hook and that'll keep your loops from falling off. Okay, so now we're going to work our way back. So we're going to start with our chain 1 and then our yarn over through 2 loops all the way across until we get to the last 2 loops, because that's where we're going to change colors. And we're going to pick up the old color. You can see it's just hanging here on the back. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You might find this first one is a little bit loose. You can adjust that by just tugging on the short strand. If we look at the back, you'll see that you have all of the tails from your different strands of yarn. And again, it's not going to matter because for this particular pattern, you're not going to see the outside. So for this pattern, you're going to just follow the pattern for the square, but now for the striped squares, you're going to alternate colors on the return of every row. And that's pretty much all the stitches you'll need to know to make the metered square pillow. You can find the pattern at the link above, and you can subscribe on YouTube to get my next video.